Tashi delay, friends. Tashi delay from the magical, mystical, wonderful Tibet. May you be doing well. Tashi delay is a Tibetan greeting that means auspicious blessings or may good things come to you. And we say Tashi delay to the yaks. I had some meditation experiences, consciousness experiences recently, and it brought to mind the awareness that there are some topics that have been on the mind, feel to share about, but I've avoided it or I've been putting it off. And with these experiences, it was like, yeah, I'm just not going to continue avoiding. So I record this not to try and convince anyone or to debate. This is really just because it's what feels right to do. Feels I feel to share about these topics. And so even if no one watches these or listens, no problem. It's more about me putting this energy out into the world instead of being silent. And as we say, sometimes silence is consent. So, different topics, and maybe I'll record some other ones, but this one is about Gaza, the people of Gaza, the West Bank, Lebanon, and Iran, and Israel. Um, but specifically about what's been going on in Gaza for so long, the terrible destruction of life, and torture and violence and abuse and genocide. I I attended university at a college that has a high Jewish population, Jewish American population. So since university, I've had, and even before university, I've had Jewish friends, friends of the family, and then living around the world. If you travel in certain places, you'll know Israeli people travel a lot. They are a very traveling nation. Even though they're a small population, you'll find them everywhere, and especially in certain places, certain countries in South America, in Asia, and where I've been living in, a lot come in India, in Nepal, some in Sri Lanka, a lot in Thailand before the war. So, and then in different types of gatherings. So for years, I've had different Israeli friends around the world, and some in Portugal, some in Spain, and then, like I said, in these places in Asia. And then since the war, there's so many more in these certain places. So I'm around Israelis. I've been around Israelis a lot. Where I was the last previous 3.5 months in Thailand, so many Israelis come that I was at the police station turning in a wallet that I had found, and some helicopters came in with the senior Thai general and minister of parliament, and they came and stayed for some days to investigate what's happening because so many thousands of Israeli families have moved there, and so many thousands more come, and there's been issues. And then where I was last year in northern Thailand for 3 months, again, same thing. People come from government officials coming up from Bangkok to investigate what's happening. So I'm familiar with Israelis. I have friends who were in the Israeli military, Israeli medic, all kinds of different connections. I don't have anything against Israelis. This is not any sort of attack on Israel or Israelis, but it's to acknowledge what is happening to the people in Gaza and Palestine and Lebanon and Iran. I learned of October 7th from an Israeli in a monastery in the UK. And then later that month in October, I stayed some days at Israeli American Friends house with his wife in U.S. I've never lived in Israel, but I've certainly talked with many different Israeli friends and acquaintances about, their whole lives growing up with rocket attacks and the stress and trauma that that brings, and then the terrible what happened on October 7th. So I'm not discounting any of that, but I'm also not going to pretend like what's happening to so many hundreds of thousands of people is not happening. Even if we didn't know, even if Benjamin Netanyahu hadn't admitted on camera, and we have the documentary, the Bibi Files, which is banned in Israel, but it's just police interviews of Netanyahu and his compatriots before the war when he was very close to being impeached and going to prison for corruption, and then the war happened and that kind of went away, where he admits to giving millions and tens of millions of dollars to Hamas. Even if we didn't have senior Israeli official acknowledging that they initiated the Hannibal Directive on October 7th. And the Hannibal Directive, if you're not familiar, is linked below, but I think it's from the 70s, I'll have to check, where they basically are willing to kill hostages rather than have them be kidnapped and taken. And we know that they initiated that on October 7th while hostages were in the process of being taken. So many other things. We know that, not saying that October 7th didn't happen, it was terrible, but the story that they've given us on what actually happened is not the truth. And then to justify that, even if we didn't know all of those things, even if October 7th had been just Hamas and totally unprovoked and all of that, I'm personally speaking out and saying I'm not okay with what's happening. I stand for peace. I stand for finding solutions that don't harm others, especially don't torture and kill. The UN just came out, I think, in December with another letter of acknowledging genocide, saying that over 20,000 children have been killed. Palestinian children have been killed in less than 3 years. How many hundreds of journalists? More journalists have died in Gaza than died in all of World War I and World War II. That's like 2.5 years, and that was like over 10 years where so many tens of millions, if not 100 million people died in those two wars. How many aid workers have died? Hundreds and hundreds of aid workers have been died in massacres. So many examples of torture are going on that we don't even think anything of it anymore because there's so much going on. So many videos by Israeli soldiers documenting their war crimes in ways that is just incredible, like some of them below, but just amazing to see people documenting their war crimes as if it is a fun thing, documenting hunting children with drones, small little babies, infants being held by their mother, being shot with pellets from quadcopters in their heads, and the parents, the adults around, are not injured. So many examples of this. It's just not okay. I'm just not okay with it. I'm very grateful to have connected with the Tibetans since 2020. I had months of lockdown in India where His Holiness the Dalai Lama is, and as you can imagine, that's a very wonderful place with his energy and the Tibetan energy. And that's really when I first connected with Tibetans and learned what an amazing, amazing culture they are, truly. And it's so much built around compassion and love and nonviolence. And even, my practices are generally the teachings of the Buddha. And of course, Tibetan Buddhism is different in some ways, but there's a huge amount of crossover, and it's largely around compassion and love and wisdom.